where this goes deeper and deeper and deeper is that you end up morphing yourself into expecting that the way that the porn showing up is the way that you can treat women in the real world. Because if you can think it, then you can create it. And therefore you're doing that with humans.
It's so wild.
Addressing your own, if you've had your own sexual traumas in your own life as a parent, that's usually where the blind spots happen.
Just suddenly a renewed interest in them from their partner. And this sort of almost like, I don't know what it is, this girlish desire to get that thing from them that has now been restricted. So I call it kind of a cheat, like for you guys out there, if you want to spice things back up in your relationship.
Masculinity is not toxic. Masculinity is medicine. Welcome to the Masculation Podcast. This show is dedicated to the exploration, celebration, and pursuit of healthy masculinity in the modern world, with a view towards helping end the battle of the sexes and bringing men and women back together by turning the battlefield of the culture wars into a garden once again. I'm your host, Michael Bates, and my mission is to ignite and accelerate the evolution of men everywhere across this planet in our lifetime in service of something greater, our shared humanity. Welcome.
Yeah. So as far as what do we do? Because yes, the brain scans are showing that the actual porn plus ejaculation are as intense as oxy, right? And so if we consider just that, we're definitely very, very addicted, right? So the thing that I always start with men is the logic of it, right? Because when men are coming to me with porn addictions or sexual addictions of any sort, there's a lot of shame that's there. And so what I start with is just purely let's get logical about what's going on with your body. What I describe to them is that in your seminal fluid and in your semen, in order to reproduce, that autonomic function, we need proteins, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and sugars in order to recreate new swimmers. And ultimately, if that energy is going out faster than we can reproduce it, that pulls from the hypothalamus in the brain. It also pulls from the entire endocrine system. So, why is that important? A lot of people are like, well, what does that matter? And the whole point of it is a lot of people don't understand that the hypothalamus is the executive. It's the executor of our entire lives. It's the remote control for sleep, for hunger, for thirst, for body temperature, for testosterone production, for mood, for leptins, all kinds of things. And so the interesting, thing about this is that when we masturbate too much, then we're pulling on that part of our nervous system, and then we're low of energy, we're dysregulated, and then what do? Well, then we reach for all of the other shit that we know we shouldn't. And so I always ask guys, let me guess, you are also probably doing some other things that you don't want to be doing after you masturbate too much. And they go, like, what? And I go, well, how about Adderall, caffeine, sugar, reaching for the croissants, alcohol, Netflix? What are some of the other downstream effects that are also plaguing you when you watch too much porn? And then as they start to connect the dots, they're like, oh, actually, yeah, I definitely like sweet candy or whatever it is, whatever their thing is. And so when we can master the sexual piece and when we can outgrow the pornography, we start to be able to manage our nervous system. And when our nervous system gets calm, then we're not reaching for all the other shit that we know we shouldn't. And that's the logical, rational reason every man should be attuned to this. And science and our science classes, they didn't tell us this shit. And we've been sold our orgasms. We have been. So, yeah.
Wow. And what a beautiful way to bring it to the male brain through logic and through the biological impetus behind the process. And that feeling of being drained, of being lifeless, of being vampired, quite literally, it seems to me, sexually vampired by this system that results in you, being slower, dumber, less attuned, less yourself. And then the downstream effects of getting swept away in your body's attempts to try to mitigate that, but doing it in harmful ways. Yeah, man. Wow. And things aren't getting better. Yeah, they're getting worse. As the technology gets even better and better, and we've got the Oculus now, these virtual reality setups and sex dolls and AI. Where are things going right now for those of us who maybe aren't in the hi-fi space as far as the porn industry and what it's cranking out?
Oh my gosh. I'll start with the VR and then I'll go to the AI and then I'll kind of circle around and we'll just kind of jam about it. So I was at my men's group probably maybe 2.5 years ago or so. And somebody brought a VR goggles and he's like, hey man, I got these the other day and I watched some porn and holy shit. And I was like, whoa. And everybody was microdosing. I was actually sober. So my intention was not to masturbate to the porn, but I was like, guys, will you guys watch me and support me as I do this? I want to actually see what this is about. I haven't watched porn in many, many years, but I want to see because I need to know how to help other men that are going to come with these addictions. And so the way that VR porn works is, I didn't see a full video. It was more of kind of a trailer, but I put it on. And then what it is it's point of view porn. So if you watch point of view porn, when you sort of look down, you're basically looking down at somebody else's cock and it's some other guy's. And as soon as I looked down, I literally jumped back in my seat. I was like, what the hell? Like, it felt like non-consensually invasive and incredibly just confronting. And then there's these two, hot yogi, chicks. It's kind of like a Bali scene, and they're just naked on yoga mats, and then they're just coming at me. And when you look into their eyes, it's like looking directly into another human being. It's not as real, but it felt so unbelievably just bizarre. It felt like I was having non-consensual sex, like within seconds. And here they are just coming over and gobbling this guy's cock, which I'm looking down and thinking that it's mine. And I'm feeling all these emotions and energies moving through my system. And it was so overwhelming. I threw the headset down and I was like, whoa, no more. And then it took probably close to 4 to 5 days to get all of that energy out of my system, meaning baths, going in the ocean, doing trauma release exercises, doing massage, doing my massage gun trainings and things that I teach in order to move that energy, because those images were so vibrant that I would wake up dreaming about them and I would see them and I would be just aroused out of nowhere. And I was like, this is the most addictive shit I've ever seen in my life. It's way beyond just this flat screen porn. So, yeah.
Okay. So that's VR.
That's the VR.
Okay. What's the AI?
Okay. So AI porn is effectively, you can either just chat with a bot, and for a lot of men that, let's say they don't want to be in the space of watching hardcore porn, they can basically just have a virtual girlfriend. And, ultimately, I see why this is happening. Because, right, it's like, why is AI porn happening? Let's start there. Yeah. And what you realize is that you have to look at dating apps as the issue and the problem here. Because you and I don't have this issue because I would say we're in the top attractive men. Like if you were to put us on a dating site, we'd probably be in the top 10% of attractive men. But for the 90% that are not, or it's not 90, but I think it's like, I think it might be, what was the stat? I was looking at Hinge the other day. I think it's like the bottom 90% of men get only like 5% of the action, basically. Yeah. Right. So if you're out there, if you're out there and you're swiping, not getting any action, and you're like, well, I guess I have no options. And so it makes sense why men are gravitating to this type of porn, because it meets a need and it's available and it's becoming relational, although not relational in a real sense, but it's pseudo attachment effectively. So some of the porn is just you're chatting with a bot, and that's all it is. Now they're starting to develop where you can chat with the bot and then you can create images, and boom, the image will create. And soon enough, we're going into video as well. But that is more AI virtual reality girlfriend. But the actual AI porn that I'm talking about, which is different, is sort of a pay to play kind of game. So you go to these sites. I found this blog. There's 72 websites, and these are like tech bros now. So instead of porn stars, where you need to actually bring in porn stars and you need cameras, now it's just tech guys that are either using, I don't know what it is, probably trying to remember the name of that service. I can't think of it. But either way, they're basically learning how to code in a way that allows for you to put in your search terms and basically have the exact thing that you want. Okay, so what does that mean? That means I can choose her age, her size, her color, her lips. Do I want her to be a cartoon, or do I want her to be realistic? Do I want her to be angry or sad or happy? Whatever I want. And then at a click of a button, within seconds, boom, there you've created this thing and you're in a relationship with it and you're now masturbating with it. So why is this a problem? One, it breeds perfection. And two, it breeds narcissism. And perfection meaning anything I can think of, I can have. And narcissism being anything that I want, I can have immediately at this moment, right? And so it's immediacy, perfectionism, narcissism, all kind of woven into. And if you're out there and you're watching this isn't a judgment on you. I'm not saying that you are a narcissist or you're narcissistic. I'm just saying that where this goes deeper and deeper and deeper is that you end up morphing yourself into expecting that the way that the porn showing up is the way that you can treat women in the real world. Because if you can think it, then you can create it. And therefore now you're doing that with humans.
It's so wild because you know what? I was on ChatGPT 4, the newer one as of June 12th, 2024. Yeah. And I've been in this process of trying to come up with my first tattoo design. And I'm putting in all the specifics and it's like, oh, this tattoo. And now you can highlight certain parts of the image and give it commands to try to change it. I spent like an hour and a half and I was just like, it took me a second. I was like, why is this? What is happening? And I felt it like this addictive almost pull into the designing of a non-sexual tattoo image where, the image is an attractive man and his back tattoo and all these things. It's like, wow, what are we getting ourselves into? And I want to reiterate what Tyson is saying is we are not here in any way to guilt, shame, or blame any of you. We're here as advocates and just to bring awareness to what the result is of indulging in these practices over time, that there is an affect and the affect is designed. It's designed to extract your money, extract your life force, extract your will force, and convert that to dollars for the people who are, creating these programs and the ones who are paying to have their products commercially exposed to you. So when you see those commercials, know what you're paying for, because I love that. I want to keep coming back to that. When it's free, you're the product. Man, oh man, it's so devastating too, because I know for our sisters out there, the women out there, it's like there's such a downstream impact for them as well.
And that's the part that scares me the most, because there's these AI porn where you can literally upload any human being and it can just undress the person. And then you can literally animate them and to start having sex with them. And so you're having these situations where teenage boys are doing this shit in New York and they're doing it to their classmates. And now there's all the laws are trying to catch up with the actual technologies. And so we don't know where this is going. And we have uninitiated men creating technologies to commercialize your life force and thinking it's cool. And we don't know where this ends. But what I can honestly say is it doesn't end well. And the only way through this is to get support and to be able to say fucking no. Because when you say no to porn, you're saying yes to the life that you really are calling in. And that life that you're really calling in is a life of connection and community and being able to have an actual partner and be in connection. So, yeah.
And I know, that's the thing too. For me, it's like, I just don't understand how that could hold a candle to the real thing and what it's like to be with the real woman. But maybe that's the naivete of not having experienced some of these things. And I know with sex dolls and these other things, how realistic they're becoming in that sense. But again, looking at the underlying symptom of what's actually happening in the gender dynamics between men and women. And this is where my work really comes in, the sacred union work that I do around helping men and women heal and come together and learning each other again and learning to respect and understand each other. There's such an impact here. Oh, man.
Yeah. And so the last thing I'll say about this is just, if you're out there, like, what the fuck do I do? Like, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I don't have a handle on this, it's having a deleterious effect on my relationship with myself or with my partner or my inability to attract, what do I do? And my whole thing with this is what's important is that we revisit what was going on in our adolescence when we came of age. A lot of people have divorces, they moved towns, their dog died, they were a pimply kid, they got bullied, whatever it might have been when you were young. When you're coming of age, those developmental challenges that you had have to be readdressed, because when we found the porn and the masturbation to feel better, when we're sad or sick or bored or anything we don't want to feel, that's where we basically started to check out. And we have to revisit those times and those spaces, and we have to do some therapeutic work that is necessary so that when now we're all grown up, we don't use masturbation and porn as the same way to regulate our nervous system when we're getting triggered in the same way as when we were young. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think this is a good point to segue it into the effort to bring healthy sexuality to men's work, to masculinity. How do we arm our young men ourselves with alternatives? How do we bring a healthy respect and education around these things when I'm sure for you it was the same as me. I remember at one class in middle school of putting a condom on a banana, and that's essentially it. And now having gone through experiences like ISTA, the International School of Temple Arts, having gone through different tantric trainings and teachings and work, knowing that there are so many wonderful things that we could be learning as teenagers and ways that we could be empowering our young people to create beautiful scenarios for themselves and for each other. Yeah. Where do we start with this, Tyson, as you see it?
Well, I think that you and I are in a very unique position because both of us run our own men's groups. You run yours out in Austin. I'm running mine here in San Diego. I also run, one online. And I think what's important is if you're listening to this and you're in the men's work space, or you're in a men's group, or you're seeking a men's group, not leaving sex at the door. So going to the leadership and saying, hey, we're doing men's work. This is great. But I want to also incorporate and I want to ensure that there's some level of sexual integration and sexual alchemy being addressed in this container if I'm going to be a part of it. Because most men's work leaves it at the door. And I understand why. I mean, I actually don't understand it fully, but I have some theories of why. But I think that's a really important piece is that what if we were to do men's work with sex as the focal lens that we look through, and how would that shape a completely new set of men coming through the boys that will be raised by this generation of the first people doing men's work? That's
it, man. That's it. And I want to really be a stand for that generation of young men who have been taught how to have a safer sex conversation, who have been taught how to understand everything from power dynamics to how to speak to wants, needs, and desires, fears, concerns, and boundaries, and really be able to take good care of themselves and their partners, be they women or men or whoever they are. But to be able to normalize these types of conversations and education for our young people, and knowing that as parents, if you do nothing, it's not nothing. It's not. It's leaving them to porn. It's leaving them to what is out there in the underground. And what is out there in the underground has a big $5 word you used earlier, deleterious effects, harmful to the mind and body in a major way that impacts our young people for the rest of their life. That, I talk about this a lot too, that porn actually creates horrible lovers, that men particularly, but I won't generalize, but I will generalize. Men specifically that watch a lot of porn get the idea from porn that sex is this machine gun fucking, this orientation of everything designed around his gratification, his pleasure, those narcissism inducing experiences that you talked about, Tyson. And it's worse than starting at zero. It's like starting at -20. It feels like, if that's all you're left to as a way to educate yourself as young people.
Yeah. And to your point, inaction is an action. So when you choose not to block your young children's, browsers, that inaction will lead to them stumbling upon it somehow, some way. So making sure that they have good browser blockers in place if you're a father or mother out there. And at some point when they get to be in their teenage years, they need to learn that they have to be able to be responsible. And so they need to have conversations around that. But I do think that, we just have to protect our children, and have those conversations as soon as possible.
Well, I even think of you, Tyson, and encountering that at age 9, at what point do we have these conversations with our children? It feels to me incumbent upon us as adult humans to integrate our own sexuality and to come to a place of love, of care, of education, of integration of our own healthy sexual life force, so that we can educate our young people around that and meet it before they encounter it. Because if we've got those browser blockers on, they're only as strong as the one friend in their friend group whose parents don't enforce that. And then they all have access to it through that device. And so it's like being willing to step into that mucky ground of having a conversation with your young person, who's your child, who's not going to necessarily understand or might be weird, but being willing to be that bold as parents. And it's tricky. I'm not a parent yet. Not yet. I have 2 young nieces that I'll be doing my part to prepare and educate as best as I can. But my goodness,
Yeah, and having conversations with the other parents that are in the community as well. And a lot of sexual abuse that I'm researching is actually kids on other kids. So older kids on younger kids, and just understanding they're often running in these circles out in the neighborhood and doing these things where they're having sleepovers, where there's other like older teenage kids that are doing things to younger kids. And so just being aware of that, being careful, and just doing your due diligence, and not, and also addressing your own, if you've had your own sexual traumas in your own life as a parent, that's usually where the blind spots happen. So if you went through something when you were 9, then when your child gets to be 9, I've noticed that there's a pattern where you start to turn a blind eye. Why that's the case, but I've just noticed that that's very true. So just being aware of your own blind spots so that you don't recreate that with your own children.
Yeah, the sins of the father revisited on the son, or the sins of the mother revisited on the daughter. And sins is a tough word. I don't mean it in that sense. I just mean, again, the impetus for our own personal development work, our own work as adults to integrate the things that have happened to us in service to our legacies, our lineage, our children. So let's really, I really am excited to talk about this, because we were joking before we started the call. The so-called conscious community and the sacred sexuality space is rife these days with a lot of brothers, let's say, who really purport to have mastered the art of multiple orgasms and sacred sexuality and all these different things. And I know a couple high-level men, one of whom I hope it's okay to share this, Justin Patrick Pierce, my dear brother and mentor and friend, where when I first encountered Justin's work through assisting for David Data back in the day, Justin and I had a really beautiful conversation. And he said, I mean, it took me 2 to 2.5 years of constant daily practice to actually be able to unlock the subtlety and the muscular specificity and the energetic pathways in the body to actually be able to reliably be able to withhold semen at will, withhold and circulate that energy. So we were sort of joking, because I know it's a popular thing and it's an easy gimmick in a way to say, oh, I'm multi-orgasmic, or I do my program kind of thing. But you're someone that I take seriously in this regard, and know that you yourself, I thought my 9 months of celibacy was a long time. You logged in over 2 years, and that level of seriousness, I just want to honor and acknowledge and respect, and would love to have you share a bit of your own journey into sacred sexuality, coming from someone who was addicted to porn, and how you've been able to be with that orientation towards sacred sexuality, the pursuit of multi-orgasmic capability, what that even means for men out there who are listening, or like, what the heck are these weirdos talking about? And then the practices of semen retention and these particular things. So love to pitch it to you, man.
Yeah. So a lot of people get into being in this field because it's trending, because they, I don't know, like you were saying, they're uninitiated guys that they just really like sex, and they're like, oh, I can make some money, or maybe they've got in because of really intense sexual trauma, who knows? But either way, there's a lot of men that are in these spaces that are doing this work, and I'm not here to talk shit about them, because we do need men talking about these things. For me, I didn't come into this work or wanting to do this work because I thought it was cool, or because it was trending, or because I was like, wow, this is really what I want to do for my life. This is my life mission. Like, I came in after a 20-year porn addiction, and I used a spermicidal lubricant condom. And when I put it on, it basically set off a series of excruciating pins and needles through my urethra, through my pelvic floor, through my balls, through my whole area down there. And turns out, after 2 years of trying to figure out what it was interstitial bladder cystitis. It was a chronic bladder disorder that ran in my family system. Oof. And my grandmother that had passed away, I guess, had passed it down through our family. And so why I share that is because I came into this work because I couldn't actually masturbate. Like, I was effectively in the most excruciating pain, peeing 30 times a day in doctors in India and Southeast Asia and Seattle and all over, couldn't figure it out. And so that was the moment when I was like, all right, I'm going to do 30 days of no porn and masturbation. And so when I came out of that porn and masturbation, when my life force finally increased, doing semen retention for the first time in my life, before I even knew what it was, I was 30 days, out of that. And I was just outside, and I was staring at the moon, and I was masturbating and looking at the moon. And I had this thought in my head. And the thought was, is it possible to masturbate without thinking about sex, having sex, or watching porn? And I didn't think it would be, I was like, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I basically just started masturbating while I was looking at the moon. And I went from like laying in my hammock to like getting up and standing at the rail on my deck and just channeling with the moon. And as this energy is moving through my system, I went from, a normal like my whole life, which is just like an ejaculatory, like a sneeze, just like a chew. And I went to like starting to have this experience where I was like, oh, geez, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden, and I ended up having my first like real fucking orgasm of my life by channeling the moon through my own system. When I had that experience, I realized, oh my God, I was one orgasm away from the rest of my fucking life, because my whole life I had thought my way to orgasm. And now I actually learned that I can feel my way to orgasm. And that was a game changer, because over here, sex is a way to feel better. Over here, sex is a way to better feel. And then I was like, holy shit, that's a game changer for me to consider. And that's what put me on the therapeutic path for 5 or 6 years, doing therapy and outgrowing porn and all of the things, because I realized that was possible. So I'll just pause there because that was a lot. And then I'll share with you a little bit about what I learned during my celibacy. But yeah, what are your, that's kind of a wild topic, but like, I might as well just share it.
No, it was great, man. I love it. I have my own version of that story. And again, encountering Montauk Chia's work at 20. I just remember being in bookstores as a teenager and then in college. Like I would always be in the adult section of the bookstore, which was basically like the sexuality section. And I'd be in there like reading the Kama Sutra and reading all these books. And I'd always be kind of like, is someone going to see me? Should I even be in here? And then having a moment of like, why isn't every guy in my class like here? Like, what are men doing to learn about this? And what could possibly be something that you would want to learn or study or be better at more than this? I just didn't get it. But encountering Chia's work, I don't know that it wasn't that I didn't have the discipline. It's an incredibly complex system. And without a mentor or without a real lineage or teachers to work through, I was just sort of left to try to work through the big draw and all these practices on my own, which did start to unlock certain abilities and the ability to draw my energy, up my spine, and which I can still do sort of just by putting my attention there. But again, I love the way you put it, because these capacities belong to all of us, every single one of you men listening. And I don't care if you've been addicted to porn for 30 years. I mean, Tyson's was on it for 20 years. Like these capacities exist in our bodies, and the sensitivity and subtleties that are there are just waiting to be explored. And they're so much better than the basic ejaculatory sneeze, as Data always used to call it, David Data, the typical ejaculation, and accounting it to a sneeze versus like this whole body, glorious, energetic swoon that takes minutes, sometimes, multiple minutes and into an hour to move through your system. And what is actually for us as men to step into this, to step beyond the shame, the guilt, the punishment, the ability to be with our own bodies, to be in relationship to self-love in our own bodies, to move beyond even things like homophobia and speaking to other men about these kind of things, regardless of your sexual orientation. There's so much wealth here. And I think it's really helpful. I know it was for me to hear stories from Justin, to hear your story and talking about having you as a guest on here. I think it's really useful.
I think the reason why I like your story, or your riff about being in the bookstores, because I was just like you. I was that guy that was always just like going into those spaces and being like, what is all this stuff? What is this about? So I can see myself, in you in that. And I think that we're in a position now where we have to be able to say, okay, this isn't just about not watching porn or not mindlessly masturbating in a reactive state. We actually have to have the full conversation, which is we have to be connected to the why. And the why is that we do have these incredibly erotic, unbelievably pleasure-filled, beautifully ecstatic moments that fundamentally change the course of our lives and what we perceive to be possible. We unlock our energetic zones, we unlock our throat, we unlock our ability to be present. And the nature of all that comes through not just stopping this thing that we know is not good for us, but actually becoming incredibly fucking talented lovers, not as an ego flex for our partner, but as an actual like humble pride that we have within ourselves, meaning that we become the best lover we can be because we get to be the full expression of God moving through us as we step into the bedroom effectively. You know what I mean?
That's it. And it is, one of the core masculine archetypes that are acknowledged cross-culturally. It is king, warrior, magician, lover. Yeah. And that is, arguably maybe the first archetype that comes online in boys. That sort of the bard-like almost Shakespearean poet. I was writing poems to girls in my middle school, and in high school, I was leaving anonymous poems in girls' lockers because I was too scared to talk to them in person. So I just, sort of drop a poem. But I just remember that sweetness and the innocence of that and the beauty of that. And I think that's one thing I wanted to speak to here too, is this practice of semen retention. As I mentioned to you, Tyson, one of the things I do with all of my men, whether in the one-on-one work, but specifically in the group programs that I do, is we'll have at least a month of semen retention practice, which means that your intention is to not ejaculate. Doesn't mean you can't have sex. Although sometimes, depending on the group, it will just by necessity be a restriction of that. But the amount of power that I certainly started to experience when I started my own early practices of semen retention, of learning to edge, of learning to be able to control that experience and circulate the energy in my own body, but also elongate the process for my partner, for my lover, to be able to extend and become skillful, as you said, not to be some jackass Don Juan, but like actually a way of being in the world where you've attenuated your system to subtlety, and you learn to pay attention in a way that allows you to experience pleasure in your own body and to bestow or be a part of co-creating pleasure in your partner's body. For the guys in my programs, one of the biggest revelations that they usually have is the semen retention practice, where they're informed, if they're in partnership, that they have to tell their partner that this is the practice that they're engaging in. All of them experience generally the same thing, which is suddenly a renewed interest in them from their partner. And this sort of almost like, I don't know what it is, this girlish desire to get that thing from them that has now been restricted. So I call it kind of a cheat, like for you guys out there, if you want to spice things back up in your relationship, take on a semen retention practice and see not only how much attention you get from your partner, but how much energy you're able to generate and to maintain and to retain through that process.
Yes. Love it. And what that brings up for me is I do the same. So the work that I do starts with semen retention. Then we go to outgrowing porn. Then we do the sex transmutation, which is basically the microcosmic orbit and understanding how to work with the perineum and move energy through the centers. And then we move to mindful masturbation, which is masturbating as a death practice. So what I mean by that is, if it were the last time you were going to masturbate and you knew you were going to die tomorrow, how would you do it differently than the way that you're currently doing it if you wanted to make it last and make it great, La
petite mort.
Yes, exactly. And then we do sexual reflexology. So all the penis stretches and effectively the penis weightlifting and doing a lot of the kung fu style sexual practices. And then the last thing that I teach is becoming multi-orgasmic. So it's understanding that this is a body of work. We're going from, not necessarily never masturbating again, like no FAP. I really don't like no FAP because in the name, no FAP meaning the sound of masturbating. So just in that way of being, you're essentially turning that off. And I don't agree with that. So for me, semen retention is just elongating the space between when you choose to ejaculate. And that's all that it means. And then when you do ejaculating with intentionality and being attuned to doing that mindfully. So that's kind of the way I speak to these things. And I love this work. It's so fun to have a guy come in and not know much about his body or to not have attunement. Maybe he's prematurely ejaculating, or maybe he has erectile dysfunction, or maybe he's in performance anxiety or whatever. And being able to, over just a few weeks, get him into his body and getting into a place where he's going from, a quick draw sort of guy to being a marathon man in the bedroom and being like, holy shit, I can actually make love as long as I want. And when I talk about that ejaculation piece, when I say premature ejaculation, I don't mean like, in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I mean, premature ejaculation has nothing to do with time. It's not about time. It's about ejaculating when you choose to. And if you're ejaculating any time before you choose to, that's actually premature ejaculation. So,
Beautiful, man. What incredible work, Tyson. I want to honor you, man. This is such big, big stuff. And I'm so grateful to all the men that you're getting to help. And guys, if you're out there listening, I mean, we'll pitch Tyson's stuff at the end so you can get in touch with him. But this is such important work. And it's something that is so close to my heart, and just really appreciate you being in it. There is good stuff happening. There is a movement. And I the no FAP thing. Yeah, man, that's tough because for me, I grew up in a yogic tradition. My father was a Kundalini yoga teacher, and I grew up listening to, I had a weird childhood, man. I had like Magic Johnson poster on my wall next to a poster of, Yogananda. Yogananda's whole thing was when you feel sexual turn on, exercise or meditate. And so many of the traditions from east to west have eschewed sexuality and have sought to push it down or distance the self from it. You become a celibate, you become a monk. And I think those traditions have utility in certain frames, but I cut myself off from my creative life force when I started pushing that energy down in a way. And sexuality is creativity, and creativity is sexuality, and sexuality is life force, and life force is creative by nature. And so what I really experienced, Tyson, in those early years was almost like an unplugging of my own sex force, because I had these experiences, or I'd find myself in one of those bookstores renting a DVD, is the time, Jesus, it was a VHS in high school, or VHS or a DVD, going home, being so excited, watching it, ejaculating, then feeling the onset of the guilt, the shame, the punishment, and being in the cycle. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so just having strong enough will to just say no. But then that leading into experiences later in my life where I was never confident enough to ask for what I wanted. I almost carried the guilt, shame, and punishment of that forward with me. Yeah, there's so much here, man. There's so much here. It's a wild thing. Well, I know we'd wanted to speak potentially about men's. It's a challenging topic. There's a lot here, but we talked a bit about wanting to peek at men's sexual trauma and how prevalent, the statistic that 1 in 4 women have experienced some type of sexual trauma. The statistic, and stop me if I'm wrong, that I've seen is 1 in 6 men have experienced that. And you alluded to some of that, a lot of that happening when we're young, older kids with younger kids, that there's a much higher prevalence of men not porting it as well because of the guilt, shame, and punishment around that. Would you like to speak to that briefly, just to sort of put a pin in that?
I mean, I think I went through sexual abuse. It wasn't until I was 10 years in my healing journey that an ayahuasca ceremony revealed to me the actual details of what I had experienced. And I had done, so much therapy and hundreds of psychedelic journeys. And I had gone through I'd even been of service for many, many, many years before I was able to actually put my finger on exactly what had happened to me. And so the reason why I share that is because I think sometimes we go trauma digging. We're like, something's not right here. And so then we're almost like addicted to the self-healing process. And that can be its own trap. And then sometimes we just block it and we're like, no, that didn't happen to me, or I'm not going to address that thing or whatever. And so what I would just say is we have to build the network of people that can support us. And we also have to build the nervous system to be able to actually be able to fully address the ramifications of such things, right? And one of the things that's really critical to understand about, sexual addiction, about sexual abuse, is this concept of a silent witness. And what I mean by that is most people either don't remember it or have not shared it because there was nobody there to witness the experience. And they're either holding the shame and or the boundary of their abuser who told them that they couldn't tell anybody. And so they're still protecting their abuser in their own mind, but they don't know it. Or they're in a situation where somebody that they did tell that this happened either denied it, walked away, told them that they were crazy, told them it didn't happen or whatever, right? So when we have a shaming witness or no witness at all, that's where we become really confused about what happened. And so if you're out there and you're like, maybe something happened, I'm not sure, I don't know, if you're in that position, either contacting me or somebody else who can understand how to help you get in touch with what may or may not have happened by believing the internal voice that something went wrong here, something definitely non-consensually happened, and believing that voice inside. And when you have somebody that can help you believe it, then we can unshame it, and then we can start to work with the story to be able to move on.
What a beautiful frame.
Yeah.
What a beautiful frame. Yeah. That feels really helpful. And thank you for being so forthcoming with your own experiences, Tyson, and alchemizing them to serve as medicine for others. It's a beautiful gift that you bring, brother. I think I know we've only got a couple more minutes here, but to tap that shadow into the sacred sexuality space and the broader spaces, and how difficult it is to be with these energies. But then you throw in weekend retreats and all these other things, and a lot of cults, a lot of broken lineages, a lot of maybe people with the best of intentions, but being subsumed by their own unprocessed desires, and a lot of things going sideways in a lot of these spaces. How do you see that, or what's something you want to sort of bring into that piece? I know we had a pretty robust conversation about that.
Yeah. So I studied a lot of cult leaders and a lot of cults, especially as it relates to sexuality, because they're rampant in the world. And, for me, as you just mentioned, there's a lot of broken lines. And what I mean by broken lines, I'm sure you have your own definition, but what I mean by broken lines is looking at where their teachers come from and what is actually happening here. So when you go up a line, you start to see like, oh, a lot of this stuff came from the East, right? These are tantric lineages of these, gurus and these, because I traveled through India. I get it. I went to these Kundalini temples and seen these types of people. And so like, I'm aware of this shit and I study it. And so it's just being aware that a lot of people are drawing their information from either India or from the dark Taoist lines. And when I mean dark Taoist lines, I mean like if you study Taoism far enough back, you start to see that there were harems where they believed that they could be immortal, and therefore they would just bring in women and they would basically it was vampiric. They would just take their life force in an attempt to live forever. So when you start to do the research, you start to realize like, oh my gosh, I should probably check in with who the fuck my teacher was and who his teachers were, and where does this actually start, and how is this information reaching me, and then check in with yourself. Don't fight them, don't follow them, don't flee from them, don't fuck them. Just sit in the middle and feel, and just kind of feel into what is their message and what are they actually here to do? Are they here to use me as a means to an end, or are they here to empower me to get to a new level, a new state of being? So,
I mean, that's a rabbit hole we could go down for a long time. I think this is a good place to wrap it, man. I really just deeply, deeply appreciate you. Deep bow to the work that you're doing. Where can people find your work? Where can they get connected with you, Tyson?
Yeah, so my website's not quite finished yet for this program and for just everything that I'm doing. I'm in the process of recreating a new business. That business will be called Life Force. But if you want to just find me on Instagram, it's just Tyson Adams, or on Facebook, Tyson Adams. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And just direct DM me. If you're out there and you want to reach out, just hit me up. I'm very approachable.
And do you have any upcoming programs for guys that are looking to kick porn, or is that's sort of what you're working on and coming in the future?
Yeah, I just filmed it and it's just now being launched. It's called Retain Your Life Force, and that's that 6-module program that I just spoke about. And that'll be going live this summer, probably in about a month or so.
Amazing.
I'm turning 40 on July 18th, so I'd love to launch it about that time. So yeah.
Auspicious moment, man. Yeah. Auspicious moment. Welcome to your 40s. They fucking rock.
Thank you.
Tyson, truly been a pleasure, man. Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.